Okay, so there's two things that I want to address in this video. First of all, we'll be talking about the culture of growing orchids in sphagnum moss. Now, a lot of people will tell you that it's impossible to grow your orchids in sphagnum and that you should never do it because the sphagnum suffocates the roots and your plant will get waterlogged and it will die. And I'm here to tell you, I am living proof that you can grow orchids in sphagnum moss. In fact, a lot of my orchids thrive in sphagnum moss. And your seedlings, especially this one here, one of my Oncidium seedlings, it would not. I'm too lazy, actually. That's what it comes down to. I'm just too lazy to come out here and water my orchids all the time, because when you plant them in a chunkier mix, you're getting more airflow around the roots. So this one here is in coconut chunks here, you can see that. So it retains a little bit more moisture, but it also allows for a lot of air to circulate around the roots so that you won't get root rot or anything like that. But for seedlings, they take so much water that you have to water them a lot, and so that's why I choose sphagnum moss for that reason, because the seedlings are able to get the moisture that they need and I don't have to come out here every 5 seconds to spray them down with water. So not only are seedlings thriving in the sphagnum, but also my catasetums. This one here is a Catasetum mormodes mix hybrid here, and you can see that it loves that sphagnum moss. You can see the new roots forming there, new roots here. It loves the sphagnum moss because catasetums, when they're in their growing state, they have to have a lot of water. Now, one in particular, this one here, this is a Cattleya, but it is also thriving in why do I keep saying Spanish moss? Well, maybe because I have some Spanish moss right there. But this one is also thriving in the sphagnum moss. So it really depends on your growing habits. It depends on where you live. A lot of people say that you shouldn't grow orchids in sphagnum if you live where it's really humid and where it's really hot. Well, guess what? I live in the south. I live where it's hot and humid pretty much year-round, and I have no problem growing my orchids in sphagnum. You can see this little keiki here, also being grown in sphagnum moss and doing quite well. You can see these nice, new, healthy, shiny leaves. So that one is also growing in sphagnum moss and doing very well. So sphagnum does have its place in the orchid world. Now, if you live somewhere like in Mexico or Costa Rica and you get a lot of rain, maybe I wouldn't plant my orchids in sphagnum moss. But because I don't water my orchids often, that's why I have mine planted in sphagnum. It's much easier for me to make sure that they're getting the water that they need. Now, another issue is, of course, whenever you cut your orchids. If you cut a bloom spike, or you cut off rotted roots, or you cut off a leaf because, it's got some sun damage. As you can see here, this one got sunburnt. And I had to cut some of the leaves here. So these leaves were cut early in the springtime, and those leaves have calloused over, but they'll always be ugly. They won't grow back, they'll just grow new ones. So you can see the new leaves on this growth here. And actually this just got done blooming, so I had to cut the bloom spike on that one as well. Now this one here actually got into a little bit of a fight with the weather. It was really windy yesterday, and unfortunately I didn't have this orchid secured like I thought I did. So it fell over and broke off the bloom spike, as you can see there. So that bloom spike did break off, unfortunately. And I'm hoping that it'll grow back. We'll see what happens. It'll either grow or the bloom spike will yellow and it will fall off. There's really nothing I can do about it. Now, the thing with cuts is a lot of people say to put cinnamon on the cuts because it acts like a fungicide and helps keep away fungal issues on your orchids, helps to keep the area dry. Here's the thing. I think cinnamon should stay in your pantry. I don't use cinnamon on any of my orchids. I'm not going to season my orchids and put them in the oven for some delicious cinnabuns. That doesn't happen in nature, so it's not going to happen for me. I don't use cinnamon on any of my cuts here. So if you do cut your orchids, it's up to you. If you want to sprinkle some cinnamon on them, hey, go ahead. I'm not going to judge. Okay, I'm going to judge a little bit, but as you can see, this one here, when I made the cut, obviously didn't put any cinnamon on there, and the orchid, whoa, it's doing just fine without the cinnamon. So it's really up to you if you want to put cinnamon on your leaves. I don't put it on my leaves, so there you go. My orchids are not dead and they're not dying. So that should say that you don't need to put cinnamon on your leaves if you don't want to. Here's the bloom spike. If you guys remember in my first video, it was the one with the orange and red blooms. So I cut that bloom spike, did not put cinnamon on it, and it has calloused over nicely, healing just fine. And there's actually a new growth coming in right there. So when that one matures, it will hopefully flower just in time for the winter weather to roll around. And then I will put all of my orchids indoors for the winter. Now, another thing to note, this Cattleya here is actually in sheath. So you can see this bubble-like leaf there on the inside. Move this pot around. On the inside, you can actually see the buds developing. So this is known as a sheath. Now, not all Cattleyas produce a sheath when they are forming buds. This one here is a hybrid. It is Brasso, Layla, Cattleya, Husky Boy, Romeo, which is a yellow flower with a red lip. Super excited. I hope that it blooms. It's been in sheath for about 3 or 4 months now. So I don't know if it's aborted the sheath and the buds. We'll find out. It's still green, so I'll leave it there. But it is forming a new growth here, so I'm not holding out hope that it's going to bloom because I think it's focusing its energy on this new growth here. So this is my orchid collection so far in the year. Really disappointed in this Oncidium spike here. I had no idea what it was going to look like, so I was excited for it to bloom. I hope that it still does decide to bloom, even though the spike broke off. But I do still have these Catasetum buds here, and so it will be blooming shortly. Those will be beautiful. It is another hybrid. It's mixed with Catasetum Susan Fuchs, which is a burgundy spotted Catasetum, so that one should be very lovely when it blooms. So the rest of my orchids, you can see a lot of them, this Oncidium there, being grown in Sphagnum moss, and another Catasetum here behind this Cattleya, also being grown in Sphagnum moss. So you can see some orchids, they really do thrive in Sphagnum moss. You just have to find out what kind of orchid you're growing, what you're going to be watering the orchid, like how many times you're going to be watering the orchid per week or, per month. So you want to find out all of that information, and that will really decide what you pot your orchid in. So I've chosen a lot of Sphagnum moss for my orchids because that's the best thing for my environment. So you have to find out what's best for your environment and go from there. So don't listen to all the haters who say that you can't grow an orchid in Sphagnum moss. Alright guys, well, I will see you later. Thanks for watching. If you guys wouldn't mind, subscribe to my channel. That would be really awesome. Let me know that you liked this video and I'll make many more like it. See you guys next week.